Welcome, grade 9. We are going to look at the second type of factorization. Now, the first type, we think of factorizing. The first type that you must always keep in mind is looking for something common, for the highest common factor, but I just refer to it as something common. So it doesn't matter if it is difference between two squares that we are busy with, you still have to look for something common first. That's always your first step. So now we're going to practice looking at difference between two squares. Difference between two squares. Let me explain this in detail. Difference means what? If I must translate difference, difference means minus. If I ask you, what's the difference between 10 and 7? The difference between 10 and 7 is 3. So it means we minus. What is a square? Now, the square root of 4, I just want you to understand the difference between a square and a square root. The square, this is the square root if you see this symbol over a number, because there is actually an invisible 2 in there. So the square root of 4 is 2, but the square, if you put this to the exponent of 2, it means it's the square. So this is the square root of 4, and this is the square of 2. If it's a cube, then they put the 3 in there. So this would be the cubic root, right? Cubic root of 8 is 2. Right, now that you understand what the difference means, so now it means if we see a negative there, it refers to the difference. And a square will be, if you can write your number as something to the power of 2, but it's not always just to the power of 2. It means it could be to the power of 4, as long as this exponent is an even number. You'll see later on when it gets slightly more complicated. So the way that we expand this is we open up two brackets. It doesn't matter if you put a plus in there and a minus in there, or whether you decide to put the minus in the front. It doesn't matter. Then you take one of those squares and you put it in the beginning and in the beginning of the two brackets. One of the 5s goes in there and there. As I said, you could just, have swapped it around as well. It doesn't matter. So remember, if they say factorize, factorize means that you put brackets in. Factorize means you put brackets in. So this is exactly what we did. So you can stop there, or you could have done it like this. But if the question says simplify, then they will give you something like this, where you must FOIL in order to get rid of the brackets. So if they say simplify, you get rid of the brackets. This is very important to understand the difference between the two. Typically in the exam, simplify would be your question 1 and factorize will be your question 2. So in grade 9 and 10, you'll hear me hammering on this because that's normally where my pupils get confused, my grade 9s and 10s. Because look here, what's going to happen if I simplify this? But then it means I'm going to FOIL. The first bracket, outer, inner, last. The first bracket here would be x times x, which is x squared. Then we multiply the outer, which is this one multiplied by that one. So it's plus 5x. Then we do the inner, which is negative 5 times x, which is negative 5x. And then the last one here multiplied with the last one there. So it's negative 25. So what happens here? The middle two terms will cancel out, and your answer is x squared minus 25. You see exactly what the original one was. So it's very important that you don't go around in circles here. So you need to stop there. Often I see pupils then start foiling it in again. So you can go all around, and that would be wrong. Okay, so you stop there. Let's look at this one. This I just do for teaching purposes. You can immediately just jump to the answer here. But 16 I can write as 4 squared. Open up two brackets, put a plus and a minus, or a minus and a plus. Then 1 4 will go in here and 1x. 1 4 there and 1x. So it's like writing one of the squares in the beginning and the beginning, then one of the y's at the end and the end. This one, open up the two brackets. So it's a plus and a minus. Y squared, so 1y there, 1y there. This is a x squared, so 1x there and 1x there. This one, 16, you can break up into 4 squared. So basically, what you do, if you're not sure what the square root is or whether there is a square root, if it gets more complicated, you can just, pop it into the calculator. Very important, because very soon we are going to look at, no, not very soon, next year, you're going to look at cubic roots. But for this year, you can just double check and test by working out the square root. And if it's possible to work with the square root, then you can analyze the possibility of difference between two squares. 4 squared, so 1 4, 1 4. M squared, 1m, 1m, 1n for Nelly and 1n for Nelly. 5 squared, so 1 5 goes there and 1 5 goes there. I just want to foil this. I won't foil all of them. I just want to do it now and then, just in case you're not sure or you can't think that this one will give you the original one again. Let's just do it for the fun of it, and simultaneously we practice foiling. As I said, this would be this simplifying would be your question 1, where it says simplify in the test normally, and this would typically be question 2, which will say factorize. Right, so let's foil. Foil, what do? I'm going to do this one in detail just to revise foiling. You multiply the first one, then the outer, then the inner, and then the last. So the first one means it's 4 times 4. So it's the first in both brackets, which is 16. M times m, which is m squared, and n times n, which is n squared. Then you multiply the outer. The outer means it's the furthermost ones in the bracket. You can see it's the outer ones. Positive and a negative is a negative. Then you multiply the 5 with a 4. 5 times 4 is 20 mn. Then we're going to multiply the inner, so it's the ones on the inside. Positive times invisible positive is a positive. 5 times 4 is 20 mn. Then the last one in this bracket multiplied by the last one in that bracket. And you see it forms like a face if you use your imagination. So there's the smile and, just use your imagination. Now, I suppose this is the smile and this is the chin. Positive times a negative is a negative. 5 times 5, 25. And your like terms will cancel out. You see how it goes around in circles. On this note, I also want to just let you understand that if you do get a question like this, they like doing it in grade 9, they like giving you something like this, and you think, oh, yeah, it's difference between two squares. No, 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 no. There's a plus. And because there's a plus, you can't do anything with this. So you just rewrite the answer. All right. Let's look at this one. There's two ways of doing this one. I always remind everyone that we can't factorize, or we can, but it's very difficult. So we don't factorize if there's a negative in the front. So one option is you take the minus out. Taking something out also means that you actually divide with a negative. It's what we, when we take something out common, you actually divide with what you take out. So I'm going to take out a minus. Then a negative divided by negative will be a positive 64. And this positive divided by the negative will be a negative x squared. Now that I sit with a minus, I can do difference between two squares. Plus in the one bracket, minus in the other one. Square root of 64 is 8, because I can write this as 8 squared. So 8 there and 8 there, an x here and an x here. So you can write it like this, or you can swap around. If I swap this one around, it's positive x squared minus 64. Open up your two brackets. X in the first one, square root of 64 is 8. So I can also write it as 8 squared. You might say to me or ask me, but ma'am, the left side here isn't the same as the one on the right side. It is exactly the same. It's just written in another order. So let's, just to show you that it is the same one, 8 plus x, I can swap around into x plus 8 because it's addition. And if I want to get rid of this negative, I can divide with a negative. So then I divide this plus, I divide with a negative, and I divide this negative with a negative. So negative divided by negative is a positive. Then this positive divided by negative gives me a negative 8. Negative divided by negative gives me a positive x. And that's exactly the same as the right side, because you can write it as x minus 8. All right, but you could have stopped there. Can I write 50 as something squared? No, I can't. Please don't think it's 25 squared. It's not. So we're going to think of the basic factorizing rules. So if you see the word factorize, you think of something common. You see something common. Yeah, I see a 2 that's common. Remember, if you take something out common, what do you do with it? You write it here and you actually divide by 2. Simultaneously, I can actually take out an x squared. Can you see this? There's 2 x's there and there's 4. So I can immediately actually take out 2 x's. So what will remain? 50 divided by 2 is 25. x4 minus x2 gives me an x squared. And 2x squared divided by 2x squared is actually a 1. And remember, there's still your negative. Can you see we can now write this as 5 squared? And 1 you can actually write as 1 squared. It's 1 times 1 stays 1. So I can further open up 2 brackets. Many pupils will actually stop here and they will only get like 1 mark. But if you do realize that you continue, you will get another 1 mark and another 1 mark, and it will typically count out of 3. So if you didn't continue, you would have got 1 out of 3 instead of 3 out of 3. So this now is difference between two squares, you see? So we first took out something common, and only after we took out something common, we were able to apply difference between two squares. So that's a plus and a minus, 5 and 1x and a 1, and a 5x and a 1. Right. Let's look at this one. 16 I can write as 4 squared. And how can we break up the 16? Now, this is important to understand. Because it's an even number, I can break it up into 2. So you divide the exponents by 2. So x to the power of 16, if you divide it by 2, 16 divided by 2 gives you 8. It's going to be x to the power of 8 times x to the power of 8. So why do we divide the exponents by 2? Because if you multiply the bases, you add the exponents. You see, so you just have to work in reverse. So I can break this up into x to the power of 8 and another x to the power of 8 minus 1 squared. You don't have to do this, when you write the answers. It's just how I explain it to you. So you open up the brackets. Does it meet my requirements for difference between two squares? Yes, it does. Although this is x8 and x8, it's actually 2 of them. You see, it's 2 of them. So that's a square. So 1, 4 goes in the beginning, 1, 4 goes into the beginning. Then there's an x8. So 1 x8 goes in here, 1 x to the power of 8 goes in there, a plus and a minus in the brackets, and a 1 and a 1. Now it's important to understand that the plus, you can't continue with a plus. So you don't ignore the plus, you rewrite it here. And try and see here that you can expand this now into difference between two squares, where there's a plus and there's a minus. The square root of 4, because we can write 4 as 2 squared, and x to the power of 8, we can now break up into a x4 and a x4. So this will be a 2 and 1 x4 plus 1, and a 2, a x4, and a minus 1. Can I continue with this? No, I can't. So here you have to stop, because you can't do anything with a 2. You can't get the square root. So this is where you stop. Right, this one, it's an even number. So I told you, what do you do with the exponents? You divide the exponents by 2. So 4 divided by 2 will be 2. So that's how we expand it. So this will be A2 and a A2, a B2 and a B2, and you put a plus and a minus. Why do we write the plus normally first? Is because in case you can continue, then you just rewrite this one down here. You just drag it down. And you analyze and see if you can't expand the negative. So I can. Another plus and a minus, and I can divide this 2 into 2. So 1a and 1a goes there, 1b and 1b there. Right, I hope it makes sense. Now you can try it by yourself by pausing the recording and trying it. This comes out of the answer series grade 9. If you want to buy the book, very nice book to work out of. So here, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So it's an x4 and an x4. And remember now, 81, you need to get the square root of 81, which is 9. So there's a 9, there's a 9. Plus and minus. Can I continue with this one? Absolutely, I can. I can continue with x4, x to the power 4 minus 9, you see? How can we expand it? X to the power 4, we can break up into an x squared times an x squared. So there's one x squared, there's another x squared. And what about the 9? You can write it as 3 squared. So 1 3 goes in there, and 1 3 goes in there. And we can't continue with this one. Right, let's look at the next one. As I said, please pause the recording and then you try it. What about a fraction? Many pupils hate fractions. And I always tell my grade 8s, you must overcome a fraction fear. It's really just double work. So let's see. Can I apply difference between two squares? Yes, I can, because x to the power 4, I can write as a x squared and a x squared. And the same with a y. So I can write this as x squared over y squared. And we just do it in the first place and in the first place in the second bracket. What about the 1? 1 squared stays 1. It doesn't become 2. 1 to the power of 100 will still stay 1. Remember that. So the 1 you can always expand. Can I apply difference between two squares with the first bracket? No, I can't, because it's a plus, right? So I can't. Can I do it with the second bracket? Yes, I can. So there's again a plus and a minus. 1x over y, 1x over y, and a 1 and a 1. Right, I hope it gets slightly easier now. Another fraction. I always include fraction sums. So again, 16 we can break up into 4 to the power of 2, and 81 we can break up into 9 to the power of 2. Basically, I just want to show you, you can write it as 4 squared, and a4 you can break up into a squared and a squared. 81 you can break up into 9 squared, and b to the power 4 can break up into b squared times b squared. There's a minus and there's a plus. So it's 1 over 4 because we only take one of these squares. And a4 then will only be a squared. So 1 goes into the one bracket, 1 goes into the other bracket. 81, so one of the 9s will go in here, 1 will go in there. One of the b's in here, you know, one of the b squares, one of the b squares will go in here. So I decided to write the minus first and then the plus. Can we expand the first bracket? Yes, we can. So the second bracket, because it has a plus inside between the two terms, you just rewrite it because you can't do anything with a plus. 4, although it's a fraction, I can break 4 into 2 times 2. So this will be 1 over 2, 1 over 2. And remember, it's difference between two squares. I'm going to write it as a plus and a minus. A squared we can break down into an a in the first bracket and an a in the second bracket. 9 we can break down into 3 times 3. And b squared into a b and a b. And if you go and FOIL these two brackets again, and then you take the answer and you FOIL the answer with this bracket, you will get back to the original sum. So this is where you stop. Right. Let's look at the next couple of sums. This is the last one that I took out of the answer series, and then we're going to look at about 5 sums out of that mind. Now, I like this one because this would be your level 4 type of question in the exam. Can you see it does meet our requirements for difference? There's a minus, which means difference between 2 squares. So that is your 1 square. You see it's squared, so I can write it as 2. You see it's squared. And then there's a p squared, which I can write as p times p. So yes, I can open up 2 brackets. And if it's difference between 2 squares, we write a plus in the one bracket, a minus in the other bracket. It's a typical teacher thing. When we try and explain things which, when we think it's getting complicated, we write bigger and bigger. You see what I'm doing here? So this, because it's 2 brackets, look what I'm going to do. 1 will go in here and 1 will go in there. So 1 little bracket goes in here and 1 bracket goes in there. P squared we break up into a P and a P. But if you thought you were done, you're not done. Always simplify by getting rid of the brackets. Okay, I'm not contradicting myself. I don't mean you get rid of the big brackets. No, you only get rid of the brackets here on the inside. That's what I mean by simplifying. And that's your final answer. Oh, I thought it was the last one. I see I included another one. Okay, I see a minus and I see a square. So I open up 2 brackets, plus in the one, minus in the other one. It's a square. So 1 bracket goes into the first one and 1 bracket goes into the second bracket. A plus and a minus, and then you write the little bracket with t minus 1 goes into 1 bracket and 1 goes there to the end. Okay, quickly see what I did. 1t plus 3 and 1t plus 3. Now you have to simplify and simplify. So you get rid of those little brackets. So it's plus. With a plus, I don't stress, so I just write plus t minus 1. But please stress if you see a negative in front of a bracket. That's minus t, and a negative is a plus 1. T plus t gives me 2 t's, and 3 minus 1 gives me a 2. T minus t, oh, it's gone, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So this is, I'm not done. What a tricky one here. What do I still see there? I still see that I can factorize. Remember, the question says factorize. So the first thing that we have to look at is looking for something common. I see a 2 there. So if I take out a 2, remember, if you take something out, you actually divide with it. So t plus 2 divided by 2 is 1. T plus 1 will remain. And then to just let it look better and simplify it, I'm going to not distribute. I'm going to multiply the 2 with the 4. So there's my final answer. Nice level 4 question. So please pause it and write down the sum and make sure you have it in your notes for a level 4 sum. We're going to look at a few sums from the Mind Action series, where I'm actually going to focus on the difference between 2 squares. I hope it's getting easier now. Can I get the square root of 48? No, I can't. But can I maybe look for something common? Because I said you must always look for something common first. So what can I maybe divide here? 3, does it go into 48? 3 goes into 4 ones. Yes, it does. 16 times. Okay, I wrote the answer now. But we can divide 3 in there. Yes. What else is common? I can take out 1 Q and I can take out 1 Q there. Okay, I don't want the scribble there. I wrote the answer there, but that's what you must do with a calculator. I just did it with my pen. So you always check if you can take something out or not. Whatever we take out, we write here in the front. And everything that remains after you divide with it goes inside the bracket. So the 3's are gone. Q and a Q, it's gone. And what remains there would be a P to the power of 2. 48 divided by 3, we already worked it out, is 16. 3 Q's divided by 1 Q. So if you divide the bases, you subtract. So 3 minus 1 will be 2. This is difference between two squares now. I can write a plus in the one bracket, a minus in the other bracket. 1p there, 1p there. Square root of 16 is 4, and q squared, we break up into a q and a q. And we can't go any further with that one. 22, it's from the B exercise of exercise 7 in the Mind Action series. What do I see here? I see a minus. So I'm going to do it in 2 different ways again. I see a minus. So like the first one we did right in the beginning, we can either take out a negative. So if I take out a negative, 8b to the power of 5 minus 32b will remain. And in this case, I'm just going to swap it around. So this is your options. I actually prefer to just swap it around. Now, what is common here? Because I can't get the square root of 32. So I'm actually going to take out all my common things. I can divide by 8 because 8 goes into 32 4 times. And I can take out 1b because there's 5 and there's 1. So basically, what do? You divide with it. If you can do it by now, just by writing the answer, that's way faster and way better. So in your head, you say a divided by 8 is 1. You don't have to write the 1. b5 minus b1 will be b to the power of 4. So the 1 is like invisible 1, which you don't have to write. 32 divided by 8 is 4, and the b's fall away. This will be difference between 2 squares again. It's a b squared plus 2 and a b squared minus 2. You stop here because you can't continue with the 2. You can't get the square root of 2. Or you could do it like this, where I take out the 8 and 1b. 32 divided by 8 is 4, and the b is gone. 8 and the 8 is gone. 5b's minus 1 will give me b to the power of 4. Which I just then say 2 minus b squared and 2 plus b squared. Right. So these are the 2 ways of answering it. Here we also sit with like a combined one where we sit with 2 brackets. So I see there's a square and I can write 1 as 1 squared. So it's like difference between 2 squares where I put a plus in the one bracket, minus in the other bracket. One bracket will go in there and 1 goes in there. And the 1 is split up into a 1 there and a 1 there. So we write the x minus y here. We just split up the little bracket. And a 1 there and a 1 there. Then we simplify by getting rid of the bracket. X minus y plus 1 and x minus y minus 1. Right, 2 to go. So pause this and you try it quickly. So by now you know it's difference between two squares because there's the difference. And I can get the square root of 9 and there's a square. So one bracket in the first big bracket and one bracket there in the beginning. Square root of 9 is 3 and 3. And then you just simplify by getting rid of the inside brackets. Right, and that's where you stop. Right, the last one. Super nice one, isn't it? Just to explain it, 4 you can break up into 2 squared. And we sit there with m minus 2n squared. 25 we can break up into 5 squared. So I can do difference between two squares. So one of these little 2's will go in there and there. One of these brackets will go into the beginning and the beginning. Then a 5 and a 5. And to finish it off, we just distribute this in to simplify the inside. 2 Marys minus 2 times 2 is 4 Nellies. And you can't further simplify that, you see. 2 times 2 is 4n minus 5. All right, I hope you understand the difference between two squares now. And thanks for joining.